The White House says President Trump was just kidding when he recently said the United States should not hold elections this November. The president made the comment during an interview with Reuters on Wednesday when discussing potential midterm losses for Republicans. He said, quote, "It's some deep psychological thing, but when you win the presidency, you don't win the midterms." He then added, quote, "When you think of it, we shouldn't even have an election." White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt asked about that comment yesterday.
The president was simply joking. He was saying, we're doing such a great job. We're doing everything the American people thought. Maybe we should just keep rolling. But he was speaking facetiously.
So John Heilemann, the president, may well have been joking, except he's also, in that New York Times interview last week, talked about seizing the voting machines. Obviously, all this attempt at redistricting these we've seen over the last year is an attempt to, however he or other Republicans try to do it, to put a thumb on the scale, let's say, of these elections.
You know, I go back to the old maxim, everything with Trump is projection or confession. I think, Donald Trump, there's a pattern on these things, Willie. It's like he talks about this. He said he's been coming back to the subject again and again, that there's something like innately irrational about the idea that given how great he's doing and how he's making America greater than it's ever been before, it's just insane that people don't appreciate him, that we should, he says, it pops up all the time. We should win in a landslide if we just on the basis of this or just on the basis of that. And if you couple that with the stuff you mentioned and the past story we just spent the previous block talking about, you wonder why people are worried about where all this is going. They're worried because when they see the militarization of American cities and they hear the president talking about seizing ballot boxes in a New York Times interview, and talking about how we shouldn't even have an election because he's doing so well. In another interview, they start to wonder about whether those two stories are part of the same story and whether Donald Trump will, when it comes to it, start to think about doing things to make it either harder for people to vote when it comes to the midterm elections and maybe the 2028 elections, whether there's some way in which the collision of this unprecedented use of American force on the streets of Minneapolis and in these other cities is going to collide with or intermingle with his obvious anti-democratic or immune from the democratic imperative leanings. And I think that's, these two stories are not unrelated. And it's why I think a lot of people are still deeply concerned about whether or not these midterm elections are going to proceed in the way that we've come to expect elections always proceed in America in the past.
Yeah, agreed. Two things here. First of all, even if President Trump is joking, sometimes his jokes become reality. He'll say something offhand, and then it picks up steam and goes. Greenland, an example. That began as a troll. Now it's a real thing that could threaten the NATO alliance. And Susan Page, to Heilemann's point, this is what so many Democrats have been worried about all along, that there'll be some sort of excuse given to put soldiers in the streets, to crack down on ballot access. We're waiting for the Supreme Court to further gut the Voting Rights Act, whether it's legislation or acts from this White House to make it harder for people to vote. And that may not include actually canceling the midterms, but maybe putting thumb on the scale. And that's the fear I keep hearing is that Democrats say, hey, yeah, we think there'll be elections, but they may not be free and fair.
It's like the old debate, should you take President Trump literally or what's it, literally or
figuratively?
Yeah, exactly. And there have been times when we've taken the wrong, made the wrong choice, at least initially. President Trump is right on this. These midterms are tough on presidents. I think that 4 of the last 5 presidents in that first midterm have lost control of the House. And the only one who didn't was George W. Bush in the wake of the 9/11 attacks that took over our politics there for a while. So he is correct that history says these are going to be tough midterms for him, just like the polls do.
And we'll see if independents come around, because Republicans not in a good place with independents at the moment on immigration, the economy, and others. Susan Page, John Heilemann, thank you both. We appreciate it. Coming up.